Dredge at first had me hooked. I was absolutely just loving what I was playing because I just thought, man, this is going to get so expansive. We're going to see some cool economic systems. We're going to see all this really cool stuff. And it's going to get, all this stuff is going to combine and it's going to come together in some kind of cohesive gameplay loop. And then it just kind of doesn't. You start off as a slow little tugboat captain, hauling in small loads of tiny mackerels for a pittance, afraid to sail into the open ocean for fear of not being able to make it back before nightfall. In the opening hours of the game, there are many moments where the gameplay loop of trying to catch enough fish before dark rolls in, and slowly upgrading the nameless captain's little dinghy into a vessel capable of carrying multiple oceanic giants is pretty interesting. Sadly, imagination greatly outweighed actuality here. There are a multitude of issues regarding gameplay. The first being almost how immediately the tension deflates after you figure out that nearly every threat in the game boils down to a slow enemy that mindlessly chases the boat. The real problem was that as soon as I was able to get my speed over approximately 29 knots per hour, combined with the burn engine ability and the hull upgrades, I never died even once in my time with Dredge. A game with no fail state, or in this case, one that is incredibly hard to achieve, has very limited potential for tension. My boat, by early mid-game, was doing its best impression of the honeycomb serial creature, zooming around every threat with my Cthulhu vibes pumping through the engine block conglomerate of my never visually growing ship. We'll get to that in a minute. There are basically two enemy types in Dredge, with certain environmental enemies being unique within the different gimmick biomes of each of the 5 main island clusters. You have the Rhode Island-inspired starting area. You have the swamp, aka Florida. You have the rocky cliffs. You have Hawaii, with a big squid in the center, and the volcanic hot zone. These enemies come out at night, and they are red clouds of bad vibe whispers, and a big anglerfish that looks like other fishing boats from afar, that are all black, and they chase you. So I never let them near me, except for experimentation because I wanted to see what would happen. The initial gameplay loop of Dredge is to catch fish, then sell them. Once you have enough money, you buy an upgrade. You make your ship bigger, which lets it carry more fish. Install a winch that can reach oceanic, then abyssal and hadal depths, for rare and expensive deep-sea catches that can be used to spend more money unlocking upgrades for your ship. Unfortunately, none of the upgrades made to your ship have any visual representation on the boat. By the end of the game, your boat has more than double the capacity for hauling fish, and can carry what look to be giant mechanisms for fish hauling, as well as a giant bar lamp headlight and huge deep-sea fishing rods, but none of that is ever visually represented on your ship, down to every crab pot and trawl net being the same model. The game doesn't really have enough mechanical depth, no pun intended, for this not to be a superficial complaint. I really would have liked to see my equipment represented on the game model of my boat, as this would have added to my overall sense of immersion, as I felt like my boat wasn't actually getting bigger, tougher, and more capable outside of the inventory screen. If the boat got bigger in the overworld as well as the inventory screen, it would have added an extra needed challenge when navigating the tight corners of certain locations in the game's latter half, while being a neat immersive ramp up of the game's difficulty. The game only gets easier as you unlock more engine space and continue through the game, because your boat only ever gets more nimble. Now on to fishing. When fishing, the player plays a series of minigames where they rhythmically press the F key, in time with little sliders or shapes that fill a circle, or etc. This passes time and puts fish into your inventory. All of the fish are different sizes and come in their own Tetris block shapes. They have to be arranged manually into your inventory. One complaint I have about the inventory system is that equipment such as fishing rods and winches cannot be stored on the boat anywhere except for where it is to be installed, meaning that in certain situations, you will install a new piece of equipment and it spits your old one back out into your cursor holding it. But if you don't want to get rid of it, and you are out of space and storage, you are forced to either sell your old equipment at a loss, or discard something from storage to make room. Oftentimes, I would have my whole cargo hold of my ship free, but for whatever reason, the game wouldn't let me use that as temporary space for my equipment while I did storage management. This especially stung when the game will let you refund something for full price before you have installed it. But if you do install it, and come to find out that it doesn't fit in your storage locker, you are guaranteed losing money one way or another. Owing to the Lovecraft-inspired setting, the fish sometimes come out very deformed, twisted by the nebulous Cthulhu vibes energy. I do really like the art design of the fish, and especially the aberrations. You can tell this is where the art team spent most of their time thinking about presentation, and I really appreciate that, as the variety of fish is very neat, and wanting to see what was out there drove me to complete the game. There are also trinkets in the game, which can be sold for money alongside the fish. These can be found in wrecked ships or when dredging for upgrade materials, with the winch the man on Black Point Island installs for you. With these trinkets comes another huge complaint for me though. These trinkets can only be sold at the one merchant on Little Narrows, and that is it. They cannot be sold anywhere else. So in most cases, I would leave them behind, as deep sea fish were often worth more and can be sold at any trader pontoon, which are conveniently located in every biome, as opposed to all the way back in the starting area. Once the upgrade system has been completed though, there is no longer any driving factor to completing anything in the game. The whole economy is spent on upgrading the ship, and by the time the last two biomes rolled around, I was already at the point where there was no point for money anymore and my ship was complete, rendering the whole gameplay loop of fishing, which is already just a boring series of minigames, thankless, as there is no traditional skill-based gameplay on offer here. The back half of this game is seriously such a slog. It kind of poisoned the whole experience. Basically, the game starts out with a good first impression, but as far as indie games go, and vibe games, this game has some neat pictures of mutated fish, and really, not all that much else. If they wanted to have a combat-free experience, there really needed to be some sort of mechanical or strategic depth somewhere in the game to justify the monotony of fishing and dredging minigames, which both boil down into pressing F at the right time. Couple that with a reward path for the player that ends before the end of the game and doesn't ever really have a tangible effect on gameplay, rather than being told, yes you can fish here, or no you can't, or being able to style harder on the pathetically slow sea creatures that chase you. Dredge could have deeply benefited from an economy system, or something more than surface level selling fish at the market for cash to buy upgrades. Dredge unfortunately wears out its welcome fast, with little mechanical or strategic depth, again no pun intended, overly simple gameplay mechanics, and an economy based around upgrades that don't actually affect the mechanical gameplay of pressing F at the right time to catch fish, or steering away from the pitiful threats this game has to offer. This game has really cool fish art, but very little in the way of replayability or longevity. If you made it this far into the video and you don't feel the need to personally attack me for my views on the game, then why don't you go ahead and consider subscribing and following me for more content. Yeah, thanks.